Okay. You ready? Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday, August 9th agenda session. If I can get a motion on our minutes, please. I do have a motion on the minutes, and without objections, the minutes will stand. Under ordinances on final reading this evening, we have an item planning B. And Karen, we did make the change for the amendment last week, and we have verified that. I'll have you read the conditions this evening at 6. Thank you. Ordinances on first reading. If you'll bear with us, we have quite a few things to get through. On item A, I believe we have a staff recommendation for a deferral for 1 week. That's correct. Okay. And Councilman Hill, you'll just jump in with me if you see anything that I miss. Moving on down to item D in District 3, Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've received a request that this be deferred until September 6th. I'll be making that motion this evening.
Thank you, Councilman Smith. Moving on to item F in District 5, Councilman Hester, please.
They have withdrawn.
And we'll look for that motion at 6. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
And 2 items in District 8. Councilwoman Knoll, if you'll hit your light and tell me a little bit about G and H, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have had a conversation and we need to make a visit. So I'm going to ask for a defer.
Okay, so we'll
At
look
that
for a
time.
deferral for 1 week to August 16th on your 2 items.
Right.
Very good.
Thank you.
That'll take care of our items this evening. If you look through items I through L for text amendments, if there's any questions on those, we did cover those in committee. Thank you, Councilwoman Hill, for that. And I'm seeing no lights on those items, so you must have done a fantastic job at explaining those. All right, there you go. That's a great chair right there, I tell you what. Under police, Councilman Henderson, we have more amendments to the ordinance that Ms. Baker had presented you. Everything good there?
Yeah.
Okay, appreciate your leadership on that. Those were very good amendments and appreciate Ms. Baker's leadership on the park. So absolutely, thank you. Councilwoman Knoll, that's an old light, I believe, as I run the board here. Resolutions under council office. We have appointments to the Police Advisory and Review Committee. Seeing no lights on questions here. Under economic development, I don't think there's anything of interest there. We do have a surplus of properties, and we have some items related to the South Broad TIF district. Any questions or comments? Councilman Henderson, I see your light, sir.
Thank you, sir. Jermaine, you mind coming up just a minute? Under E, as we create the board of directors for the Sports Authority and looking at our economic impact plan for the South Broad District area, I heard you say last week at the county commission meeting, and sort of what I've heard before, that the IDB would, I guess, direct or determine how any excess revenues would be determined to be spent. But on page 3, and maybe you can help clarify this, on page 3 under item 4, the very top of the page, it says the manner and order in which any such excess of tax increment revenues is applied may be determined by the Sports Authority pursuant to the documents under which bonds and other obligations are issued. So as we're talking about excess, are we talking about the excess revenues that the TIF would generate? It looks like the Sports Authority is the one that determines that, not the IDB.
No, so that is incorrect. The Industrial Development Board has the full power under state law to decide how incremental property tax revenue is generated or tax increment from the TIF. Now, what will be negotiated with the Sports Authority is how much debt coverage the Sports Authority will be allowed to take on in furtherance of paying down the debt service on the stadium. But the IDB has sole authority by state law, and given our interlocal agreement, the IDB of the city will partner with the IDB of the county to also allocate and control the county's increment in addition. So the Sports Authority only has the power to determine how tax increment is used for the tax increment that is used to service the debt on the stadium itself, because they will be the owners of the stadium. And so they will be obligated to pay that debt service.
So the word excess there basically is referring to the generated tax revenue, period. I mean, I'm not necessarily anything above or beyond what's needed. Is that what I'm
Yeah,
understanding?
so the best way to sort of explain this is, let's say what will have to be negotiated with the Sports Authority and the bondholders once the bonds are issued is, let's say that in a given year, the revenues that are predicted to come back to the Sports Authority or to the IDB and then to the Sports Authority will account for, say, 120% of what's owed on the debt service. What has to happen then is the Sports Authority and the city have the ability to negotiate an agreement whereby it can be determined how much above the excess is then used to cover or is then used to cover other costs, and that is controlled by the IDB.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
in our packets this afternoon, there is a resolution that I would, with your blessing, would like to present to the council at this time, and I would have done it in the form of an amendment to this package, but is my understanding, Jermaine, that if we did an amendment, that basically we'd have to almost go back to the beginning, go back
Yes.
through the IDB, go back through the county commission. So think of this resolution as an amendment, but I think what it does, it creates some transparency, and it also creates some assurances that this council will oversee this whole process. And if you would look, council, in your package, Mr. Chairman, with your permission,
Yes, sir. Please do.
thank you. I have a resolution requiring the Sports Authority to report certain information to the city council. And basically it does four things that I think is very important to create that transparency and to give our constituents the assurances that the council is overseeing this process. Number one, it would require the Sports Authority to report annually to the city council on the amount of debt outstanding. The second thing it does is it notifies the council at such time that all debt coverage requirements are satisfied. It brings that back to the council so that we know when that debt coverage is satisfied. But it also notifies us if there is an excess in tax increment over and above what's needed to pay off the bonds, so that the council can then decide, do we want to put that back into the general fund, or do we want to see it continue to be used in the district? So we sort of have the ability to capture that excess tax increment that we've all been talking about in the last couple of weeks. And then basically, number four, the notification, they'll notify the city council so that we can notify the county commission so that those legislative bodies can evaluate the South Broad District impact plan to determine the public interest for alternatives. So I think this adds a little bit of a layer of protection for our constituents, as well as puts us in a little bit of a oversight of this plan throughout the process. The reason, like I said, I'm offering this as in form of resolution is that an amendment would have taken us back to the beginning. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put this on the floor to see if the council would like to entertain this resolution as a package this afternoon.
I do have a motion to add a resolution to tonight's agenda, and it is related to the stadium and South Broad District. I would like to ask if there's any objection to that. I do not see any at this time. I will open the floor now for conversation. Councilwoman Hill.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the first I've heard of this. I'll be interested to study it. Councilman Henderson, I appreciate you bringing it to us. Makes a whole lot of sense. One item that I would like to discuss a little more is Section 3, about once the stadium debt has been taken care of, that we would then alert the county commissioner so that we can evaluate the plan to determine if it's in the public interest to consider alternatives. The Alton Park connector is an important part of our plans for the TIF within Chattanooga. So how might that project be impacted by this resolution?
So the city can continue their TIF without the county commission continuing theirs, and so that we can continue to capture that revenue off of this.
Okay.
If we decide to.
That's interesting. Okay. Jermaine, does this present any problem bureaucratically within the lines of who's on first?
No, the Sports Authority is, once the Sports Authority issues bonds, they are required to report to the state anyway as part of their bond requirements. So adding an extra layer of reporting to the city council is perfectly reasonable. And I think to Councilman Henderson's point, it adds a layer of transparency.
Okay.
And so to that extent, I don't see anything wrong with this. The administration is perfectly friendly to this. And we want the people of Chattanooga and Hamilton County to be proud of this project.
I think this combined with the MOUs that Councilman Henderson also recommended that we add to the package, offering a lot of protections to our taxpayers and a lot of clarity on where the money's going and where we stand. So I'm excited about the possibility of this. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Councilman Henderson on the proposed resolution for tonight? Councilman? My only question would be,
Who's on first? Yes.
it's, if you don't know it, you don't know baseball. But anyway, that's for sure. Councilman, do you know when our expected first year of report to council would be based on, I think, under line item 1, section 1?
Well, an annual report would start after the bond.
Once the debt's been incurred? Okay, so that actually, this resolution actually addresses or allows council and obviously the public to start tracking this immediately.
Yes, yes.
So I think that's a really good idea. And I think your MOU was also a very wise idea. And I see those as well to mitigate the risk, as we should all be concerned about. So yes, sir. I appreciate that very much. Any other questions or comments on the resolution? I'll ask the council once again if there's any objection to adding this to tonight's agenda. I'm seeing no objection, sir. This will be added to tonight's agenda.
We added, I guess, maybe after either E or perhaps
Mr. Cherney?
If we can add it to I, that would probably be simpler under as I.
So after, okay, so we'll have a new I.
Yes,
Okay, Mr. Attorney, you good?
yes.
All right. Make it so. All right. Any other questions, comments on this item? Good, Councilman? Thank you for your work and diligence in looking out over this project. I appreciate it very much. I know the council does, and I know the taxpayers will as well in the city of Chattanooga. Moving on to, where did we leave off? Human Resources, item I and J. We have 2 appointments to CARTA, to the Transportation Authority Board. Any questions on that? Seeing no lights. Mayor's Office, Mayor's appointment of Todd Morgan to a 5-year term. Madam Clerk and City Attorney, whoever would address this, can you please put in the dates on that for me? The term ending, we've been following a resolution format. I'd like to keep consistent with that, please.
Sure.
So that should have a start date and an end date, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Under planning, we have a resolution to review authority for the subdivision plats. We covered this in committee. Councilwoman Hills, are there any questions? And Karen, you can nod your head, or Dan. This is basically extending the 2-lot to 5-lot review threshold, if you will, that staff can handle internally. Okay, that's the crux of the text amendment. Yes, Dr. Burrs, please.
So how are you going to handle the language about with notice to council person?
So I made a comment in our notes that if council chooses to proceed with this and allow staff to do staff approval for 5 lots, anything over that would be, as mentioned, would be on the Planning Commission agenda and Planning Commission or the Planning Agency website. We can send a monthly list of, by district, of staff approved lots. And so, staff approvals for those that are 5 and below. And at the end of the month, we usually have around 30, so we might be closer to about 40 of those a month. We'll just send a list by district to all the council members of these are staff-approved subdivisions in your district, if that's how you'd like to proceed.
That would be really helpful so that we have notice. There's no argument about it, but it would be helpful to know that we have notice.
And we can start that in September, and at just the end of September, it'll just be a wrap-up of the staff approvals for the month by district.
That's great. Thanks
Okay.
so much.
Does that help out, Dr. Burrs?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Karen. Seeing no other lights on items in agenda, we move to purchases. We have 2 purchases this evening. We have no RFPs and no emergency purchases to report. Any questions on purchases for this evening? Seeing no lights, if you'll switch over to your August 16th agenda. We have ordinances in final reading. I have assuming with the deferrals, we will see ordinances in first reading. Moving into police, we have the ordinances on final reading. We have ordinances on first reading. This is a resolution to confirm the appointment of the governing board for Head Start out of District 4. Cody Harvey, and thank you. I see his beginning and end term. Thank you very much. Under fire, do we want to defer that? No, I didn't think so. I was just trying to be a little funny. I was trying to raise the spirit here a little bit. Okay. I don't think we're going to want to defer that either. Okay, very good. We're very excited to see that. So under human resources, any comments that need to be made on human resources item? Mandy, no? Good? Okay. We have an appointment to a 3-year term of the Library Board of Directors. And then under Public Works, a Skylift heavy-duty vehicle. So seeing no lights on questions for the 16th, if you'll take a look now into future considerations. And those of you following us out there thinking we're moving a little fast, we do have these packets way ahead of time and have studied them and should be prepared with questions when we arrive to the dais. So Councilwoman Hill, I see your light.
Thank you, Chair. In future considerations under Parks and Public Works, item number 3, it's a abandonment of a portion of Rossville Avenue right-of-way corner. It's listed as District 4, but I think that is incorrect. I believe that's probably District 7 or District 8. So I just wanted to bring attention to that item so that the appropriate council person would be aware that it's coming.
Well, having been, had an office on Rossville Avenue and being District 4, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah, it's kind of
So,
far from you.
You're absolutely, thanks for catching that. Mr. Attorney, you've obviously heard that. All right, thank you. Any other questions on future considerations?
I would also just like to say that I do have a planning item that's coming through tonight and then next week. I will not be at our meeting next week because my daughter is turning 18 years old.
And that's in the council rules, right?
It's in my council rules.
It's in your council rules.
We thought about having her move her 18th birthday to another year, but we thought I'd just take the night off and be
Very
with
good.
her.
I understand. Thank you for letting us know. And happy birthday to her.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Any other questions under mayor's office? We have several appointments. Seeing no further lights on future considerations, we do not have any department reports this afternoon, but we do have 2 committee reports. And I will now turn the chair over to Councilman Hester for a quick Parks and Public Works. And then if you don't mind, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome to Parks and Public Works. Can we
Move to
accept the
minutes.
minutes? Your second? Okay. Madam Clerk, can you read 7M, please?
A resolution to accept as city property a multi-use path landscaping conduit pedestrian light pole foundations and $41,500 for light fixtures at 900 West 33rd Street from J.A. Field and Company, Inc., developer of Foundry 33 for the Alton Park connector.
Okay. 7E, please.
A resolution authorizing the purchase of 2 Skylift 200 heavy-duty vehicle lifts using Sourcewell Contract 013020 SKI for the new solid waste and recycle facility from Heavy Duty Lift and Equipment in the amount of $334,399.76.
Thank you. That concludes Parks and Public Works. But let me say this to Parks and Public Works, guys, you guys are doing an exceptional, great job for the city. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. Sorry.
Welcome to Equity and Community Development Committee. Can I get a motion on the minutes? Thank you. Karen, could you read item 5A?
An ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code Part 2, Chapter 2 by adding Article 16, Chattanooga Department of Community Development, including the Office of Family Empowerment Advisory Board.
Okay, any questions or comments? Thank you so much. Well, we have 2 updates and a presentation today. We have an update from Community Development with Neighborhood Services and Code Enforcement, followed by a presentation from Westside Evolves with the Chattanooga Housing Authority. So Tony, you ready?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of council.
Good afternoon.
We are extremely excited to give an update from the Department of Community Development. And in the interest of time and per the instructions of Madam Chair, we'll only bring information updates on 2 divisions in the order of code enforcement by our Chief Code Inspector, Donna Castile, and our new Neighborhood Service Manager, Ms. Lisa Thompson, will give us an update on neighborhood services. We do have a couple of slides. We won't start with asking questions yet. If you don't mind, just going to the neighborhood services slide, code enforcement slide, please. There we are. Thank you. At this time, Ms. Donna Castile will give you an update.
Thank you.
The objectives of our one-year plan include preventing the spread of neighborhood blight and decay by fostering a community's ability to stabilize its housing market, improve outreach and communication, and more clearly define code enforcement. To better identify what we do and eliminate confusion, the Code Enforcement Division is in the process of being renamed property maintenance, code enforcement. We enforce violations related to existing houses and structures, litter, overgrowth, inoperable vehicles on private property, and illegal businesses in residential areas. We're able to demolish and board dangerous structures, tow inoperable vehicles on private property, and abate litter and overgrowth. Our focus is on impacting blight. In FY22, we brought 11,603 properties into compliance, demolished 41 structures, and brought 130 derelict commercial properties into compliance. We also eliminated 62 structures that had been boarded for many, many years. 38 are being renovated and 24 were demolished. All 56 dangerous properties as identified by CFD and CPD were immediately addressed, many through emergency boarding, some through demolition. We continue to have monthly meetings with CFD, CPD, and the mayor's office to discuss progress of the most dangerous properties list, which is an overlay of fire and police calls. We also identify and share information on properties that are especially dangerous to first responders due to missing or failing floors, stairs, or structural supports. Inspectors check boarded, vacant, and recently burned properties in their assigned areas regularly to be sure they are secured. Keeping them secured helps prevent additional fires and crime. Inspectors performed 117 systematic inspections in FY22. Neighborhood leaders recommended some of those areas that were inspected. Inspectors post signs informing residents that neighborhood inspections for housing, litter, overgrowth, and inoperable vehicle violations will take place the following week. After one full week, the inspectors re-inspect the area, and if violations remain, they send out courtesy notices to those who still have violations. Court summonses follow if properties are not brought into compliance. 2 additional inspectors and 1 additional demolition abatement specialist is in the process of being hired. The 2 added inspectors will improve coverage of blighted properties and also provide support to our focus on structures that have been condemned and boarded for many years, and also handling derelict commercial properties. The additional demo abatement specialist will speed our overgrowth and litter processes. To improve communication and outreach, we are attending neighborhood association meetings where we explain how we can help and take questions and requests. We have invited associations to send us their top 5 concerns each month so that we can prioritize and address those issues. We also allow them to send us lists of blocks where they would like systematic inspections performed. We have friendly informational brochures that are distributed at neighborhood association meetings, and they are included in our notice of violation letters. And they're also provided to landlords to try to educate the community. To educate citizens on 311, we leave courtesy notices at addresses where we find first-time violations who have not entered 311 requests. We enter those requests for them one time. The letter lets them know we're entering it for them this time, but the next time it's on them. By entering the request, it also speeds compliance. We also post 311 informational signs in areas where there is a problem of people not calling 311 for pickups. Notice of violation tags are attached to mailboxes to make residents aware of violations faster. The tags provide details of all common violations and also checks off the violations that are found at that address. The city website is being updated for our department, and educational material will also be added soon. Some of those updates for our division have already occurred. Do you have any questions?
All right, council, thank you so much, Donna. Are there any questions for Donna, who's over code enforcement? All right, you must have done. Oh, I'm sorry, Chair, Councilman Henderson. It is.
Well,
There you go.
Am I ready? Thank you, Madam Chair. Donna, out of curiosity, we talked about several months ago coordinating with the fire department to identify condemned buildings that could be a problem. How is that going? I mean, have we been able to identify buildings? Have we been able to do anything with those buildings to make sure that, we're addressing the safety of our firefighters that are having to go into these unsafe buildings?
Yes, we're doing several things. So Rick Boatwright and others communicate very well with me. And as soon as we are notified of a dangerous structure that may need to be boarded or some other emergency measures taken, then we do address those immediately. So we have emergency boarded a number of structures to keep people out. And of course, those are condemned immediately. And then many of those we have followed up by taking them to demolition hearings to try to get the demolition process going.
Do we go back and follow up to make sure that they're still boarded? Because I think what's happened many times is we board them up, but then people find a way back into those structures. Do we go back and follow up to make sure they're still secure?
Yes, sir, we do. Our inspectors do follow up frequently to make sure that they remain boarded, and there have been many structures that we have boarded repeatedly. We also have monthly meetings with CFD, CPD, and the mayor's office to discuss the boarded properties, and we let them know what's happened on our end. But we do communicate very well.
Okay.
There's also a process in place. We had started a spreadsheet for properties that were especially dangerous for first responders, and IT is also working on something that will kind of integrate what we have in City View with 911 so that properties that are especially dangerous to first responders will be flagged so that whenever first responders are called to a particular address that they will know while they're on the way. But that's still just in process right now to help speed that so that they have that information immediately without having to refer to a spreadsheet.
Now, I'm not sure if I understood. You saying that's in process or that is something that we are implementing now? In other words, if a first responder goes to an especially dangerous
Property.
Right. Do they know on their way there or not?
Okay, right now we have a spreadsheet that has that information, but they are working on, do you want to take that, Julia? No. Okay. But IT is working on, IT and the mayor's office are working on having something that will flag them immediately through
Okay.
911 so that 911 has that information to give to the first responder in a quick fashion.
Okay, because I think that would be very helpful.
So right now it's a very manual process. And so to just add on to what Donna was saying about what we're doing with technology services, they're also working on an app and an algorithm that is a little bit more predictive. So the overlay that Donna was talking about, looking at police and fire incidents as well as codes incidents and seeing, okay, where are little things popping up that we know right now could elevate to becoming a larger issue. So let's try and get ahead of those. What technology services is currently working on with the app using that overlay of information is also helping us understand, based on historically what has happened, being able to say, okay, this property is showing up as red because based on what we know, there is a higher risk that in the next 30 days, a major incident could happen based on the fact that they have a codes issue that is electrical. They've had a fire issue in the past. We know that homeless services has seen activity at this site, so on and so forth. So just as an example, but so then that same technology would tie in directly to 911. So rather than this manual resharing of that spreadsheet, it would automatically tie over and they'd be able to say, okay, we know that you're being dispatched to X address. And we also know that this address has been flagged as being dangerous or is already condemned or what have you.
So how long do you think before we get that up and running?
I'll have to follow up
Implement.
on a date for you as far as when the direct integration with 911 will be done, but it is in progress and I'll get you that date.
Madam Chair, could we get a follow-up on that, please?
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Councilwoman Coonrod. Thank you, Chair. I'm excited that you all are starting the neighborhood roundtables. So is there a flyer that we can share with our constituents so they can attend the meeting?
Yes, we have code-related flyers, but yes, I can make sure that you get flyers that you can pass on to your constituents for the roundtable.
Yes, especially
Yes.
since it's in Glenwood and it borders District 8, so we can rally our constituents to come. And then I like that you all are thinking about adding Facebook and Instagram, and our seniors are now trying to migrate to the platform of Facebook.
Mhm.
But in order to reach our millennials and Generation X and Y, have you all thought about WhatsApp and TikTok so we can engage with every generation? Because we're missing some target groups. I mean, it'll actually be fun to see neighborhood services doing a TikTok to kind of engage with the importance of the work.
Okay, those are good recommendations, and I will talk to Napira about that. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But to your point, we are looking at all the platforms of engagement with our community on all levels. And so that is part of what our public relations coordinator is looking into now.
Okay, and then just one last thing that I know, at one point we was kind of talking about mimicking the school board where they have like a student that sits on their board, and we may not be ready for that approach. But have you all thought about engaging your youth maybe with a youth ambassadors program or something with neighborhood services? To put to use their
We're starting
legs?
with the approach of having youth as a part of our community advisory committees.
Mhm.
We're starting there. So you're on target. We are wanting to engage our youth in each of the regions that we will have a community advisory committee. And so we're starting there, and we're wanting to plant that seed of the importance of having the voice of our youth engage with our young adults as well as our seniors. Because in order for us to have a complete community, everyone has to be a part of it.
That's right. Thank you. Make sure you put my name on that idea.
Oh,
Thank you.
don't worry, I'll put it down there.
Okay. All right. All right. You good, Councilwoman? All right. Councilwoman Hill?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Donna, I appreciate your presentation. Thank you very much. I would like to know the percentage of successful long-term stoppage of code violations. So like, for example, you go and you've issued the code violation, the issue is fixed, and we don't go back for a year.
Okay, and
that could be something you pull the numbers for.
we can pull the numbers for that. Yes.
The reason that I ask is because it seems like as a city council person, I'm called in when repeated code violations have occurred and when even repeated trips to court have occurred. And it feels really hopeless for neighbors when they get to that point, and there's really just nothing more that we can do by law. So I'd like to understand how often we're successful with using this mediation process and how often we're just kind of left wondering how in the world can we get XYZ house torn down. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. You good, Councilwoman? Yes. All right. Chairman Ledford?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Donna, I want to say, first of all, thank you. Your team has been very helpful in District 4. We've had a couple of incidences where we needed to have houses boarded up and property owners calling us for help and assistance. And I appreciate you all coming out there so quick. My second part of this is I would love to plug in somewhere in your conversation about social media.
Okay.
The most concern, or I would love to talk to you about, is Nextdoor. I'm very familiar with it. I use it a lot in my district, and it has its pitfalls, especially when it comes to misinformation and firestorms, depending on whose mood someone has. And I would not want to see the city not be effective and be misused. And I've seen that, and I can cite some very, very solid examples of that in the past. So I would just like to be in that conversation if I can. Let me know. I'm glad to come down and meet with you all and kind of share some experiences on that. So just
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, I don't see any other lights. So Donna, thank you so much for your presentation. We appreciate it. Tony, did you have an update for neighborhood services?
Yes, so again, I want to introduce our new neighborhood services manager, Ms. Lisa Thompson, and she will give us update information on what we're doing in neighborhood services.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, council. Thank you so much for your time. I know many of you from RPA, so good to see you, Chairman. So week 2 on the job, I've got my tennis shoes on today. We've been out in the field, going to community centers, talking to the centers about partnering with neighborhood services to help us also partner with some of our other departments. So we're working with the Parks and Outdoors team and obviously Office of Engagement. Just trying to get word out about some of the programs that are going on and some of the activities and events. So Chairman, we are working on a social media presence. We also understand the liability and the concerns about using those platforms. So we would be interested in talking to you about that. So we are right now currently, we do have an active community development next door page. I'll be happy to share that link with you. And we are also awaiting the update to the city's website. And so our public relations officer is working with that team. And then we are looking at Facebook and Instagram. And Councilwoman, while I do not personally have a TikTok, my dog has one. And it's a pretty prolific page. So yes, I agree. TikTok is definitely something to use. A couple of upcoming events we want to make sure that you all are aware of. First, we have one of our walk and talk sessions. This is where we're actually going out into the community, into the neighborhood. And we're actually doing a literal walk through the community. We have community leaders, stakeholders. Our last one, the chief came out and walked with us. We're identifying issues that are specific to that neighborhood and actually putting action plans in places with departments to address those issues. So we're excited about that. And our next one will be in August 11th at 5:30 in Eastlake. And I would encourage any of you who'd like to attend, even if it's not your district, come out and talk to Chattanooga. We would love to have you. And then, as I mentioned, we're just partnering with some of the other departments. We're working to market the Parks and Outdoor Master Plan Survey. And then we're re-engaging our neighborhood roundtables. So this is something that we were doing pretty prolifically. And obviously with COVID, then we had to kind of put that on pause. So we're bringing that back. We had one recently in Avondale. I attended. It was a very, very, very successful meeting, very engaging conversation with the community. And then we are just looking at other partnership opportunities. And I, at last minute, got invited to Councilwoman Coonrod's community meeting last night in her district. It was very wonderful meeting, a lot of engagement, and we were excited to be there and just be there to observe and to see what was going on. But some really great things, and again, a great conversation. So again, as I mentioned, I'm on week 2 of this position. I'm very excited to be part of the team, and thank you for the opportunity, and I'll take any questions you may have.
All right. Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you. So there was a time when we had really robust lists of neighborhood associations. And the one we have now is not so good.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know I depend on that a lot. I've gone out to the neighborhoods that are in my district and tried to build a list. How dedicated are you to that happening again out in the burbs?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I see Tony.
Yes, Councilman. So we are, and I'll defer to Tony, but we are currently doing an audit of the current list, and we have an action plan in place to make sure the list is correct and doing a yearly, maybe even biannually update to that list.
Okay.
I personally use that list in my planning work when I was an RPA, so we
Yeah.
also understand the importance of it on multiple levels. So that is in play, and we will continue to be updating that.
So it's really, really out of date.
Yes.
Particularly in
Yeah.
my district and maybe others. I can send you what we've put together ourselves.
Okay.
And then are you available to help start up neighborhood association meetings again?
Yes, Councilwoman, we are. So I'm like I said, week 2 on the job, so I'm kind of getting acclimated to the team, but we are re-engaging into those processes and those meetings, and I would love to connect with you about how we could particularly work in your
I
district.
think it's important because it allows all people to get included. And when we want to get out information,
Yes.
like for the new stadium and like for all
Mhm.
the things, there isn't a vehicle. It also becomes important in zoning when you want to send a notice to the neighborhood lists. And gosh, people from all over, not in those neighborhoods, were getting notices. And people move a lot. I know
Right.
that. But I think it's a really robust way to meet
Right.
people and for the city and people
Right.
to engage. So if you would, I would
Yes.
really appreciate
I'll be
it.
happy to do so. And I will just say, just as a final comment, we are looking at some other more digital platforms to maintain that list so then they're more easily accessible.
Great.
But again, to Councilman Letford's point, we want to make sure that there's some control mechanisms. We want to make sure that we're the central depository, if you will, for that list.
I agree with Councilman Ledford's comments.
Yes.
Some of those are not helpful. They turn into gossip columns.
Yes.
That's not what it was meant for.
I understood.
So I agree with everything he's saying. In my area, they're not real helpful.
Yes. Would it be okay if I connect with you after the meeting or maybe tomorrow about setting up some time to come and talk to you?
Sure. Just email me and we'll set up a time. I think it's really important because I think your job is terrific. And I think it's an important job. I'll do anything I can to help you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. You good, Councilwoman? Okay. Councilwoman Coonrod?
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Lisa, it was so nice to meet you last night. Thank you for joining the Eastdale community meeting last night. You know, I can rock with a person who put on some tennis shoes and not afraid to go out into the community because we can't reach the community that we serve sitting behind a desk. So you clearly understood the assignment. And also is that you understand that you have to be approximate to the problem to go out in the community and to actually see what solutions are needed in order to, come up with a solution that's going to be workable for all. So I really appreciate you doing that. And anytime that I'm happy to join you on walks or anytime you want to go into the community, because that's what's important to me, is that we're reaching the people where they are, but not just leaving them there, but we elevating them to the next thing that's best for them to operate in their best self. So thank you so much for doing that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Good, Councilwoman? All right. Councilman Hester?
I agree with Council, with all my colleagues. It's a very important job you have. And you stated that the neighborhood roundtable be held in Glenwood. How often will you go from neighborhood to neighborhood?
Thank you for that question. So right now we are working out that schedule. We would hope to maybe do them monthly within each district, but it may be quarterly just as we're getting started and merging back into that process. But I do envision them being a monthly meeting within each district.
All right. You good, Councilman? All right. Thank you so much, Lisa. We appreciate it. And I look forward to walking and talking with you Thursday in East Lake.
Thank you so much. I look
Thank
forward to seeing you then.
All right. All right. Next up, we have the West Side Evolves presentation. Jermaine, did you want to come up first?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So today you're going to hear about the West Side Evolves plan from the Chattanooga Housing Authority, all the work that they have been doing in terms of a community revisioning process in partnership with the Chattanooga Design Studio. We just shared, they're going to present their slides today as part of their presentation, but there is a much longer deck that we just shared with each of you that we would like for you to review. One of the things that they're also going to be doing is, as this is an official land use plan, similar to the South Broad District Plan, there is an expectation that it should also go through the Regional Planning Commission for approval before coming back to the City Council. But today is going to be an information only presentation. And so with that, I would like to introduce Betsy Mcwright from the Shenega Housing Authority.
Good afternoon, council members.
Good afternoon.
We are so excited to be here today. I'm Betsy Mcwright. I'm the director at the Chattanooga Housing Authority, and I'm joined by Eric Myers, who's the director of the Chattanooga Design Studio. I know that many of you joined us back in the February and March timeframe for one-on-one briefings. So today what we plan to do is acquaint you with the planning process, provide you with the resulting highlights of the plan, update you on the progress we've made since we were together back in the February-March time zone, and then also tell you about next steps. And hopefully we've left enough time for any questions that you might have. Could you change the slide, please? Oh, can I change it? Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. Just to level set, what is the West Side? As you can see on the left side, the West Side is bordered by MLK on the north, Riverfront Parkway on the west, Main Street on the east. No, Main Street on the south, get your directions right, and I-27 on the east. Essentially, it's 115 acres. And what exists on the site are 4 CHA-owned properties, all of which are income-restricted properties that are home to 1,015 families. We also own, we being CHA, own the James A. Henry School. There are other rental properties that are privately owned, Boynton Overlook, Riverview Tower, and Golden Gateway, totaling 473 units. So there are roughly 1,500 families who live in the study area for the West Side plan. Of course, you all know the city-owned land includes Sheila Jennings Park and the Youth and Family Development Site. And then along MLK and Riverfront Parkway, there are several for-profit and nonprofit businesses. Why the West Side? Particularly close to my heart as the director of the Housing Authority, we have 2 seriously distressed properties. The first is College Hill Courts. It is the oldest public housing development in our portfolio, the first ever to open in Chattanooga. It opened its doors in 1940 and is home to 497 families. The property has been in decline for many years. We have no central heating and air systems. We have no fully compliant handicapped accessible units for people with physical disabilities. And I won't bore you, but we have a host of ongoing maintenance problems, one of which is plaster. Who knew? The last physical needs assessment was completed in 2020, and it suggested that there is a $49 million price tag to bring the property back into the most minimal conditions. And that does not consider the 58 buildings on the site that will need new roofing in the next couple of years. The second property is just up the hill. It's Gateway Tower, owned by the CHA. Gateway was built in 1977, so you might say, boy, that's a lot younger. What could the problem be? Well, during my tenure, I've been here almost 15 years, we have grappled with water infiltration problems at this building. When there's wind and rain, the water infiltrates our units, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's not always the same floor. It's not always the same stack. It's varied. So because of the water infiltration, we have had to take 29 of the 132 units offline for seniors because obviously there are safety concerns with the building. When we engaged an engineering firm back in 2017 who diagnosed the problem with the rain and the wind, they suggested 3 different solutions for remediating the problem, ranging in costs from $2 million to $9.2 million. But there was a huge caveat that captured my attention. Betsy, we can't guarantee that any of this will work. So we decided to include Gateway Tower in the study area as a possible building that would be demolished and replaced with new housing. Oops. Okay. Apart from the real estate challenges, as the slide indicates, this is one of the oldest and most historically rich neighborhoods in Chattanooga. However, it has been largely overlooked by all of the unbelievable development that's gone on in downtown Chattanooga. It remains isolated physically and basically has not seen any improvements. We know that there is a lot of potential, and we experience that potential in the planning process. especially with our residents and their desires and their visions. We also have a lot of natural resources that are resident on the tract that we'd like to share with you as well. So we've assembled a team that believe that we can do a lot to improve and revitalize this community. We have a team of the Chattanooga Design Studio who really led the planning process, the City of Chattanooga, who's been an incredible partner throughout the process, the Chattanooga Housing Authority. And for the planning process, we engaged the EJP Consulting Group. EJP is a nationally known firm that works in this type of neighborhood revitalization across the nation. And we can't leave out an army of residents. In fact, we have two of them here today, Miss Barbara and Mr. Jojo. We have had so many residents provide input to us about what they see for their community, because after all, they live there. Additionally, there have been a lot of other Chattanooga stakeholders who have been involved in the process, who have lent their time and energy and voices to making this the best possible plan for your consideration. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Eric Myers. He led the planning process, and he will walk through the process and the resulting highlights of the plan.
Thank you, Betsy. Good afternoon, Council. It's wonderful to be here. Wonderful to see you all. So I have the incredible job of getting to tell you a wonderful story of public engagement and incredible teamwork in our community, people working together to solve challenges and discuss with one another the future of their community. We began in March of 2021, and if anybody in this room could remember what's symbolic about March 2020, excuse me, we all know what happened to the world at that time. We were able to, just before that major time period of change, have one in-person community advisory group meeting. This is 25 people, former residents, current residents from the community, many officials from the city, CHA officials, et cetera, meeting, having lunch, talking about what are the goals and aspirations for a plan such as this, if there were to be a plan. And on that day, we established the goals which were fundamental to this study. Number one, one-for-one replacement of the deeply subsidized housing on the site. We read these aloud together in the room together. I will never forget this day as long as I live. It was a wonderful camaraderie and very bold leadership step for this group to take. Number two, expansion of the affordable housing in this district. If you know the magnitude of the waiting list that the Housing Authority has at any given time, you know that there's an affordable housing challenge that we need to meet. And so we feel like we can do that in this part of our community. And number three, infusing a market rate mix within the housing typologies that are in this district so that in the future, decades to come, this is not necessarily a community that's a concentration of poverty, but a mix of people living with a mix of incomes, with a mix of different backgrounds, and a mix of different opportunities. And that should speak to how the plan could evolve to be incremental in ways that over the next 10 to 20 years could happen not as one fell swoop, but could happen in incremental ways. We believe that at the Chattanooga Design Studio, we believe that urbanism happens best when it happens over incremental change. And that could happen with traditional town planning principles that we understand how we live with one another by blocks and streets and things like that that are really relatable to one another. So that first community advisory group meeting, and we met virtually then after every month with one another and shared what our goals were. I'm proud to say that a good portion of that community advisory group then volunteered their time to then select the EJP consulting group in June. We had a very open process where residents were involved in selecting the national consultant and the team through 6. I'm very also pleased to say that we were honored to get 6 proposals from groups across the nation to come here to Little Chattanooga and work in the West Side on a process like this. We started in earnest with that team, hired with funds that we raised from local foundations, the City of Chattanooga, and the Housing Authority. We began that process in earnest in August of 2020. And what we started with was understanding the neighborhood. We started with a deep level of surveying activities and intensive activities to get a lay of the land, so to speak, from people that are having a lived experience. I'm pleased to say and report that we had 80% participation in surveys that were taken, and they were conducted in a manner where we had a resident survey team. The Housing Authority offered stipends to residents to be paid to do these activities. If you know the story, you know that Tech Goes Home gave tablets to the residents so that they could do this safely, masked, and a tablet, and ask the questions of their neighbors. These were not light surveys. Many of them took 20 to 30 minutes, and they were intensive. They talked about health and wellness, educational opportunities, connectivity, transportation opportunities, and a really, really robust list of the things that residents are experiencing day to day in the community in the West Side. So we began with that deep level of understanding of what is currently happening in the West Side. We had pop-up conversations that happened at backpack drives throughout the fall, in the late summer, that happened at different community events that our team took on, and just had lighthearted conversations, drawing with children about what their vision for the future was. It seemed like we were popping up at every single event with different pieces of papers, engaging people at all ages, and having wonderful conversations. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you about the Imagination Team, a wonderful group that we were able to, through a local grant, hire 6 artists to be a part of this team to not only lead planning exercises and talk about planning in the future, but also to talk about creativity and to infuse this work with oral listening histories. We recorded people's history of the West Side. We recorded a life book, which is a wonderful example of the lived history of this neighborhood. It's 5 panels. It's a living piece of artwork now. We have a living gallery of art from these 6 artists that were commissioned that can really replicate and understand the history of the West Side. In winter of 2020, we began workshops, which we conducted virtually and in person safely. In order to provide safety, we had a series of 3 workshops during that spring that were conducted over Thursday evenings, Saturday mornings to get as many people as possible, because we all know that not everybody has their evenings available and some folks are working different shifts and so on and so forth. Those workshops really brought forth, I think, many of the ideas. We brought the conditions and the neighborhood data that we heard, and we said, so you can kind of imagine those workshops going like this. We heard this. Is that true? If that is true, then what is the nature of how the future of the neighborhood could respond to you? And we heard a lot about community development opportunities, new housing opportunities, wanting new housing opportunities, and wanting the housing to respond to families' needs. Really educational opportunities and employment opportunities, be better connected to the community, to have fresh food available in the neighborhood. And so I'd love to share with you a little bit about what the plan recommends. And I'd also like to say that this is a very robust plan, and it all lives online. It has lived online since we started the process in 2020, westsideofalls.com. And the recommendations are included there, and we will continue to update that site as we move through the implementation process. But the plan outlines a bold vision for the future of a complete neighborhood. And what I mean by a complete neighborhood is one that's connected to downtown, that has connectivity within, that has open spaces that are connected through and without the neighborhood, that has multiple housing options. So from multifamily housing that might be above retail to very, very smaller scaled cottage type housing. And that's what this rendering depicts, looking from Main Street to the north, blending in seamlessly with the Boynton Hill existing towers. This is a view looking at an extended Boynton Avenue. If you know the community, you know that Boynton is a beautiful tree-lined street running off the hill, Boynton Hill, into College Hill, stops at College Hill today. This rendering shows the vision for reimagining a park for the flagpole, which is a beloved public space in the community right now in the heart of College Hill Courts, and saving Grace the Tree, which we heard quite a bit about Grace the Tree, which is probably a 60-year-old, 80-year-old oak tree in the middle of College Hill Courts. So this is how all of this is blended together. We heard a lot about the typologies of housing and the front porch life that exists today and the residents really want to be a part of tomorrow. And this rendering shows, again, how it all comes together with strategies such as preservation of the Sheila Jennings Park and the adjacent James A. Henry School as a community hub, as a hive of activity where early childhood educational opportunities can be expanded for the community from what currently happens at 12th Street today, and adjacent to recreational opportunities that we heard a lot about, picnic areas and splash pads, and opportunities to have health and wellness opportunities for sports and activities that don't exist today. So that's how it all comes together. It's all convenient and centralized for the community. And right now, unfortunately, that seems to be scattered in a little bit distance. And so those are the recommendations, and I'm going to turn it back over to Betsy to take you on home with how we get there from here and what are the first steps. Thank you very much.
So this gives 18 critical paths that must be accomplished. And I get completely overwhelmed when it's like this. So I always have to organize the work into buckets that are manageable in my head. So I'll share that with you. First and foremost, the CHA has hired EJP Consulting to be the implementation manager, for the project. Makes sense because they were involved in the creating the plan, so they understand it fully, and they'll help us implement. The first order of business that we're in the middle of now is we are engaging an architectural engineering firm to do the detailed planning for the renovation of the James A. Henry School. We plan to award that, we being the CHA, plans to award that contract at the end of this month, which will really kickstart the James A. Henry renovation. The next significant partner who is missing is a master developer. So the CHA has issued an RFP for a master developer. We had a terrific meeting yesterday to answer any questions, and we had a really robust group, both online and in person. Their responses are due on October 31st. So after the evaluation committee does their extensive work, we expect that we will be able to present a recommendation for award of a contract by the CHA board in the first quarter of 2023. Of course, we have to complete the surveys, the environmental and geotechnical studies, and site engineering for phase one. Phase one will take place at the YFD site. It will be the first phase of residential before any unit is taken down to College Hill Courts. We expect that on that property, we can build 119 units, and that will be the first undertaking by the master developer. Next, we keep Sandra Gober's department very, very busy. She is overseeing environmental reviews for YFD, James A. Henry, College Hill Courts, Gateway Tower, and Sheila Jennings Park. These environmental reviews are necessary to be completed for a number of activities that must happen, one of which is the transfer by the city of the YFD land to the CHA to enable us to begin residential development. They're also essential for the CHA to apply to HUD for approval for Section 18 demolition disposition for College Hill Courts and Gateway Tower. We're also working on physical needs assessment for those two properties, and at some point we'll need a letter from the mayor approving these submissions for Section 18 approval from HUD. And then there's a pesky little thing called funding. We have been working hard over the last several months since we all met in March, and we're very happy to say that Representative Fleischman's office has worked to dedicate $3 million in earmark funding. We have $2 million that's been dedicated by the county in American Rescue Plan funding, and we are hopeful that the city will approve up to $3 million between ARP funding and the Affordable Housing Fund. So we are well on our way to be able to afford to move forward on phase one of the plan. Then there's the Choice Neighborhoods application. Choice Neighborhoods is a funding tool offered by HUD. And in order to access the $50 million that's available in that funding, we have to apply with the city. And we've been meeting on a biweekly basis with all of our partners, but Choice will be an important part of funding for this project. Right now, we expect that the NOFA for 2023 will come out in the fourth quarter of 2022, and with the application being due in February. We're not sure if we'll be ready for that time frame, but we're poised as we've been going through the planning process almost to check the boxes that are necessary to be able to submit the application. If we're not ready for this funding cycle, we expect we'll be fully ready in late 2023 for a 2024 submission. In order to make that application, we do need City Council adoption of the West Side Transformation Plan. We will have to, we being, I use a royal we because there are so many people working on this, so I'll try and be more clear. The CHA will procure a people lead and a case management lead for work under that Choice Neighborhood application. The CHA will have to prepare relocation plans for both College Hill Courts and Gateway Towers, which will be basically the recipients of the funding. And we'll have to work collaboratively with Tennessee Housing Development Agency. Ralph Perry has assured us that any successful applicant for a Choice Neighborhood Award in Tennessee will be guaranteed up to 6 years of successive 9% low-income housing tax credits. So that is huge. We will not have to apply competitively for them. They will not pre-approve that. We have to wait to get the award, and then we should get that funding. We also plan to try to persuade THDA to do what EJP calls twin deals, where we would do a 9% deal in the same time that we do a 4% deal, which will help the phasing and expedite the project. And then a critical element of this is ongoing engagement and marketing of the project. Just because we've talked to residents many, many times over the course of the project, we've got to keep our elected officials, we've got to keep our residents, we've got to keep Chattanooga overall engaged and knowledgeable about what we're doing here. We also have to make sure that we're keeping our state representatives involved, our federal representatives involved, because it is really going to take everyone to be able to assemble the funding to move forward. We also have to implement partnership agreements with some of our key partners, and they will be determined as we go forward. I can't give you a laundry list now. We are assembling a capital stack that consists of all kinds of funding, and we plan to basically uncover every rock we can to see what we can put together, because it is going to be a real challenge. So those are the next steps. That's why we lie awake at night sometimes, but I think, unless Eric, you have anything to add, we'd be happy to accept any questions that you may have.
All right. Thank you so much, Betsy, for your presentation. Council, do you have any questions about this project? Ooh. All right. Councilwoman Mcwright.
Thank you, Chair. Betsy, we've talked several times about this project. I still have a couple of questions and a lot of concerns. So out of the 1,500 so residents, how many surveys were actually completed?
We completed 82% of the residents at College Hill Courts, and there's 497 folks there, and 82% at Gateway Tower. And then I would say we completed probably 50% at the other CHA properties.
Okay. And then when you say the one-for-one replacement, exactly what does that mean?
Yeah, I want to be really clear on that because it's really easy for the community to get concerned about it. So the total number of units at College Hill Courts and Gateway Towers is 629 units. We have committed that we will develop 629 units for those units that we lose because of this initiative on that footprint. We're starting with YFD. It's called a Build First strategy in HUD speak, so that residents who live at College Hill can see units coming out of the ground that can be their units. So then we will begin in a phased approach, taking units down at College Hill. And we are hopeful that we can continue and perpetuate this build first approach so that we'll be building and we'll be moving people out pursuant to a relocation plan. We can't guarantee that we'll be able to keep up with that. There may be times when we will have to relocate residents who currently live at College Hill off-site for a period of time until those units can come out of the ground, but they will have the opportunity to return and live in the west side.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, if I live in the west side, it's a unit that's gonna build where the early learning site at. Once it's built, I can leave on 12th Avenue, 12th Street, and I can go move across the street to the new unit.
Yeah, if you're in yes, if you're in the first phase identified for demolition of College Hill. So we have the development over, I believe it's 12 phases. So if you happen to be in the first block that's targeted for demolition, you would be offered the first opportunity to move into the first developed new affordable housing, if that makes sense.
Okay, now, here's my issue. Considering the income level of the residents that live here, we all know that they're in the 0 to 30% range or so. An article came out in the Chattanooga about, and the numbers here are the exact same numbers that you quoted, and we saw on the presentation that 87% of the people that live in that area live in poverty. 87% of those same individuals are Black. Also, the article said that 85%, and I may have the number off a little bit, will be, 40% or so will be geared for market rate housing.
Yes.
Then you have a certain percentage that'll be towards the 80% AMI. So if the residents are below the 80% AMI, how will it be a one-to-one replacement if they're not even in that range?
That's a very fair question, because the plan is to build more than 629 units. We believe that on the land that the CHA owns at Gateway Tower and College Hill Courts, and the YFD land that the city will transfer to the CHA, we can put in up to 1,783 units. So it's not just the 629. We're going to develop far more than that. So the 40% piece, we are suggesting that it will be families from 80 to 120% of AMI, but there'll be enough units to accommodate that 40% plus more than what's currently on the site for folks who are in the various levels of income and AMI levels. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Thank you for explaining it to me, because I was really concerned. And here's my other question. I'm really excited about the development that's taking place in the West Side. I mean, we lived in the West Side, and I'm sure a lot of the staff here lived in the West Side too. Let me make sure I say this. Will this development, and I hear what you're saying, I want to make sure that my words aren't coming out in the wrong way, but for me, I see this opportunity and this kind of development happening, and we use the same one-on-one replacement. We fix up these areas with the goal of we're going to improve the quality of life. For example, what's happened out there in the villages, that same concept, but now we see how it looks in the villages now. Not just the villages, when you look at other areas, it's the same way. What's going to be different from this development in the West Side, not turning into what was once out in considered Boone Heights, and I lived there too before. It seemed like my family bounced around to every housing development, or what happened in the Powers Homes or out in Spencer J. McCauley. Like, what's gonna prevent this from not turning into that?
That's a really fair question, because there has been a history of moving residents off, bulldozing down the affordable housing, and then sometimes people were allowed to come back and sometimes aren't. I can give you that this is an underlying premise of this plan, that those residents who live in those two developments that are targeted for demolition or disposition will be allowed to come back. I wasn't working here during the Hope 6 development, but I see that this will be a multi-phase project. We plan to bring in high-quality master developers. We have very committed members of the city who want to perpetuate the affordable housing that we build and make sure that it's quality. This community is going to be integrated into the downtown community, and I do think that that will make a difference, especially with the connectivity. What I'm really excited about, and I always share this story, Eric has probably heard it 4,000 times. When we interviewed residents at Gateway Tower, they're like, we really want to go fishing, Betsy, but we can't get to the river from here. So this connectivity that is built into the plan, I think will keep this a more vital community and keep the investment coming. Can I guarantee that? No, I can only tell you what the intent is, what the spirit is, and what we are committed to moving forward with.
Okay. And one last thing, Chair. Since it's apparently going to still be, I guess, a Chattanooga Housing Authority property, I guess, or is it, what's in place? And I'm not sure if HUD got, and it's maybe more personal for me, what's in place for individuals that are at this AMI level of 0 to 30% to actually help them get to the next level, like employment opportunities, going back to school or getting a trade perhaps, or, to increase their wages. Like, it's so many generations that are living in housing developments. Like, they're created to be a stepping stone, but we have generations on top of generations that's living in housing developments that's not moving upward to the next level. Like, are there self-sufficiency programs that's being offered? Is there anything to say, listen, you got a 5-year plan, we're going to help you get financially stable, get you to become a homeowner, you move to this next level? Or is it just geared to keep people in impoverished conditions?
No, good question. So what's very instrumental in the choice neighborhood application is of that 50 million, I believe it's 4.6 million must be used for case management services. And as I mentioned, the CHA will have to engage a case management providers, plural, to work with every single family on self-sufficiency activities. And the thing that I see as a great opportunity in the first instance is right now we have a school where we have classrooms and the ability to offer training, career training, IT training. But because we've got a roof that doesn't work, the building is largely unused. So I think this combination of enhancing the James A. Henry site and the Sheila Jennings Park as a hub will address many of those concerns that you raise. And people have to be willing to take the classes. And that's what I think these case managers will do, to work with family plans. And I know we have a date sometime soon to delineate all of the existing program that we have right now for our residents, and looking forward to sharing that with you.
Thank you, Betsy. I appreciate you answering my questions and addressing my concerns. We done talked several times about it, but I really want to see how we can reduce that number from 87% of Black people that's living in poverty, that concentrated poverty in that area. Maybe we can mix it up a little bit and not just have I'm going to end it at that. We'll continue our conversation offline. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Good, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Hill.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Betsy, I really appreciate the work that your team has put into this and the energy that you're going to have to bring to sustain the project. It is quite a list and involves so many different groups. I appreciate the way you've gone about it. Did want to follow up before I speak anymore on my colleague's question, because I was still looking for a little bit more information when Councilwoman Coonrod asked about the comparison to, I just blanked on the name, the cottages. I think the concern that this body has had is about the management of that. at least that's what I'm thinking about when she asked that question. And as I look at this beautiful idea, I mean, one of the thoughts I had was like, that looks as great as the university where I'm taking my daughter next month, right? Or next week. But the maintenance of all of that and how it stays shiny and clean and the residents have a good quality of life. Can you speak to that for us?
Yes, not with extreme detail. The CHA plans to continue to own any land upon which new development takes place. We expect that the master developer will use private management companies because the low-income housing tax credits will be used significantly. There'll be management companies who have vast experience in LIHTC management. And so I can't tell you now who those management companies will be. I suspect they'll be varied, but the CHA will have a say in choosing those companies and vetting those companies to ensure that residents are treated well and the properties remain in good condition.
Okay, so vendors who have performed less than ideally that would be taken into account, I would think, when they're considered. Okay. I think that's everything that I have. I'm pleased with the progress that this is making, and I think you all have a lot to be proud of the way that the financing for phase 1 is coming together. There's a lot of cooperation, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other likes. Thank you so much, Betsy, for your presentation. And of course, I'm excited because it's in District 7, as well as all the other wonderful development projects that are going on currently. So thank you so much. And I'm glad that we are finally investing in the West Side.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you.
All right. That is it. Thank y'all so much. We'll adjourn to 6.